7 o'clock, call this common council meeting to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call roll, please.
Chapman.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Foodie. Here. Justman.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Runge.
Here. First item of business is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
Motion by Foodie. Second by Justman. Any further discussion, questions, or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve minutes from previous meetings? Motion by Chapman. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Foodie. Any questions or comments on those? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve minutes of intervening meetings?
So move.
Motion by Foodie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Justman. Any further discussion on those? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comment regarding agenda items. Todd, are you here to speak for anything or just
Nothing in
observing?
particular, just wanted to say we're kicking off the second week of school and I think it's been going great. And so if there's any questions anybody has, certainly know where to find me. I'm more than happy to do that. Probably one area of interest for all of you is you'll be receiving a survey here in the next couple of weeks from us. We're going to do a huge survey across the community to determine kind of the community values and things like that as we think about our operations moving forward, looking for a potential threshold for a potential referendum in the spring of 26. And then in the event that maybe that doesn't pass, we're hopeful that it will, but if it does not, we're just looking for some direction from the community on potential budgetary reductions. So that's all I wanted to offer.
Thank you. Comfortable in your new spot?
Love it. Yeah, it's been great.
Well, good.
Yeah, I've gotten all over the whole district. There seems to be like a lot of support for the school. I think, we're at a huge advantage where it's a beautiful building, and I think that's something that we don't have to really compete with. And a lot of districts have aging buildings and things like that they're facing in a time of increased expenditures and, just the cost of everything increasing. I think it's a huge advantage that we have. And so it's been really, really, really nice. Great staff. And now with the students coming back over the last 6 days or so, it's been fantastic. We had a great community event when we had back to school night, a lot of activities for the kids, a lot of partnership and things like that at petting farm and all kinds of stuff, and dunk tank, and it was great. So yes, really good. Thank you for asking.
Moving on, communications. We have Amanda from Baker Tilly here to thrill us with the results of her audits.
Do you want me just up here?
Yeah, in front of the camera, preferably. That's fine. The camera's behind you there.
Well, there's two of them actually.
And
Yeah,
I was told this side of the room has got to talk extra loud
All right.
because the range of the receiver isn't that great.
Would you prefer to sit? Do you want a spot to
I can stand up, that's fine. I can wander if needed, but,
sit?
It's like
okay.
in church.
Yep. All right, let me know if I need to be louder, but, all right, so, hi everyone, thanks for having me tonight. I'm Amanda Blomberg, I'm with Baker Tilly, the city's auditors, and we issued the financial statements not that long ago, so a little bit later than normal. I'm, appearing here, but I don't think there's anything concerning that, was time sensitive or anything to share with you ahead of time, but what I'm going to do tonight is talk a little bit about the financial results. You probably all got some reports with our name on it. The thicker one is the financial statement document that has all of the financial results for 2024 for all of the different funds of the city, including utilities. I'm not going to be speaking about utilities tonight. I think they do their own thing with the utility commission. And then the other document that you see there is kind of a related document that has a number of required communications, like internal controls, auditor communications that go to yourself as those charged with governance of the city. So nothing too surprising in that audit result document or the smaller one. I can field some questions there, but mostly my focus will be on the financial results, and we're trying to boil it down to kind of, what do you need to know about what's, to make it more understandable for you as you move forward through, especially this, next budget process and wrapping up 2025. The financial statements are, a larger document. There's a lot going on in there. So again, just trying to make it more understandable and readable for you. So did everyone get a graphs handout as well
They're all in the
in
packet.
the packet? Okay.
So if you hit on your packet, if you hit the Baker by Baker Tilly, it's linked, so it'll go right to where you need it to go.
Yeah, if you want to pull those open.
So under
City Bureau
communications,
financial highlights.
Yep.
We're into the graphs.
Okay, great. All right, so if we go past the cover page, and if you take a look at that second page, we're going to talk a little bit about the general fund balance. The general fund is the main operating fund of the city, so a lot of the tax levy goes there. Most of the operations that occur from year to year are recorded in that general fund, and so that is definitely a point of focus for yourselves as well as outsiders as they're looking at the financial health. Fund balance is another word for equity in the governmental world. So it's assets minus your liabilities, whatever is left over is in that fund balance number. Now in governments, we take it down and even divide that fund balance into a few different categories. And it's really just based on the liquidity and availability of those reserves. And so if you look at the graphic on the top of that page, page 1 that we're looking at, you'll see the fund balances in total, 24 and 23 in comparison in that chart at the top. And then as we move our way down, we're starting with the most liquid and moving to the least liquid. So if we start at the bottom, we have our non-spendable, which is a pretty small amount compared to the other categories. But non-spendable really is that part of the reserves that's tied up, and we can't just liquidate it and use it for, our current expenses or costs that we have going on. That's a pretty small amount, like I said, in comparison, but it really is made up of anything we've prepaid. So the money's already out the door, or we might have a few delinquent receivables, like delinquent personal property or special assessment type receivables that are out there that we just can't collect on immediately and be able to use that money for our current bills. Again, relatively small size, only about 45,000 of the total in 2024. There's no amounts in the restricted or committed, so we'll just jump up to the assigned and the unassigned. And these are the most liquid and available reserves to the city and to that general fund. So assigned is really just kind of, it's earmarked for something. Most of the time, these monies are for a subsequent year budget. We're going to use it in the future. We haven't quite decided what we're going to do with it, or we're going to use it in our next year's budget potentially. The unassigned is really the most liquid. It has the ability to be used. It hasn't been earmarked for anything, and so that these last two categories, the assigned and unassigned, are really the most important categories that we want to take a look at. If we go to kind of the summarized income statement in the middle of the page, you'll see kind of what happened to fund balance overall. There's an actual column, the final budget, and the variance. So you'll see that in actuality, the general fund, the revenues exceeded the expenditures for the year by about $268,000. So that was really good. the budget had planned for an equal, a balanced budget, no income, no loss, which, hardly ever happens, but, it's good to have that little bit of income. And this was really a combination of a couple things. Revenues were over budget by about 105,000, and a lot of that was related to interest earnings that were higher than budgeted, as well as some ambulance charges and some miscellaneous revenues that came in. I think some insurance proceeds and that kind of thing. The expenditures were were under budget by about 163,000. So the combination of those two will, both contribute to that increase in your fund balance of the 268,000. The main departments that were under budget for the year were police and public works. So overall, the fund balance increased at 268,000. Most of that really affected that assigned category. So you see how that one had grown a lot compared to the last year. That's where most of that went. And the reason for that is on the next page. So there is a fund balance policy that the city has in place where, really the goal is to have the unassigned balance to be about 15 to 20% of your annual expenditures. So what that means is that you have reserves on hand. You can, get through 15 or 20% of your year without any additional revenues for the year. And that's a fine place, fine policy to have. So what that policy also says is that anything over that, we're going to kind of shift into that assigned category. So that's why that grew, is because that unassigned balance kind of stayed similar from last year to this year, but that extra that we had in that fund balance is kind of dropping into that assigned line, according to policy. So what that means is that there are some additional funds that were generated over 2024 that could be used for, something in the future. This chart on page 2 really shows how the fund balance has trended over the last 5 years. And there's a red line and a blue line that represent those fund balance numbers. The blue line is your assigned and unassigned together. The red line is just that unassigned amount. So you can kind of see how that has trended over the course of time. Again, generally, that red line, it popped up a little bit in 22, but has been right within that 15 to 20% range. That is, the goal of the policy. And then when we add that unassigned balance in, we have that blue line that, is a little bit higher as far as numbers and percentages. Any questions on that? So a good year.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn to the next page and we'll talk a little bit about general obligation debt. This is another area that is kind of particular interest to, many people looking at your financial health and really as it relates to general obligation debt. So there's a few different types of debt out there. GO debt is secured by the tax levy, and it is generally issued by, the city for governmental type activities and projects. The utilities will also issue debt. Most of the time they're issuing revenue bonds. So that's secured by the user charges, fees that they charge. The utilities will often take a share of the GO debt as well. So it is expected that they'll repay that GO debt. It's just that it's secured by the tax levy versus their user charges. So when we take a look at the GO debt in total, we're considering both sides of that, both the city and utility. And there is a statutory limitation as far as how much GO debt any municipality can hold, and that's 5% of your equalized value. So that 5% limitation changes over time as the equalized value also changes. And you'll see that with that black line on the chart on page 3. So that's that 5% going of equalized value kind of, creeping up over the course of the last 5 years. The red line is the actual amount of geo debt outstanding, which again includes both city and utility share. At the end of 2024, it was at 68%. So that's, you know, a little bit higher than we've normally seen for the city. I think that was known as that was issued. I think, you know, the city is kind of on a 2-year schedule for issuing some debt for projects. So I would anticipate that might, you know, come back down next year as some of that debt is paid off and there's potentially no new issuances. If we look over the course of time prior to that, I don't have the percentages written on there, but I calculated them real quick. And back in 2020, we're around 31%. In 2023, we're at 47%. So it took a little bit of a jump this year. I think the main, you know, thing we want to watch here is just making sure that, you know, our debt payments are generally smoothed out, you know, that it doesn't have a huge effect on the levy in order to make those debt payments. Also, just of note is that the utility portion, like I mentioned, is generally paid by the utilities, so we can kind of take that out of contention as it relates to the tax levy or what is needed to levy to repay that debt. If you go to the next page, then that is this compares the annual debt service on the city portion of the geo debt. So it's taking the principal and interest and comparing it to the expenditures of the city of those governmental funds over the course of the years. It looks like it's kind of going up and down. This chart's kind of magnified a little bit, but generally the principal and interest payments over the course of the 5 years has been between 10 and 20% of the annual expenditures. So again, this is another way to kind of look at it to say, well, if we're issuing a lot of debt, we're kind of getting closer to our limit, and we're also, you know, getting way over 20% on this chart, you know, where it takes, you know, it's more than 20% of our annual expenditures, you know, then we want to take a second look at that and make sure that, you know, we're not, you know, kind of putting ourselves in maybe a challenging position as it relates to our debt capacity. But so far, so good. You know, I wouldn't be concerned about this at this point. Any questions on that?
You said these are for non-capital expenditures.
Mhm.
Give us some examples.
Yeah, so it's more of the capital can really fluctuate from year to year. So we pull that out of the calculation so that it doesn't like make those amounts, you know, go up, the percentages kind of skew otherwise. So this is supposed to be, when we take capital out, it's supposed to be more of a consistent number from year to year that we're comparing it against.
Operating and maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, there still can be some fluctuation, especially like you had some ARPA dollars that got finally spent in 24. So that's going to actually, you know, add to your non-capital expenditures, you know, and so there's some things like that that will, you know, kind of affect that bottom number as well. But, you know, when we take a look at kind of, you know, what that debt repayment schedule looks like, that's kind of what I was mentioning before, is that's really what matters, is like, what do we have to pay this year and what are we levying to pay that?
Speaking of debt, is there any accounts that are required to have like a balance in them because of like the bond and liabilities that we own?
Not on the city side. I mean, the utility revenue bonds will have such requirements, but not on the city side.
Like LGIP accounts are backed by or something, that
No.
they have to keep a balance?
No.
But the utility does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some debt reserve requirements that usually come along with a revenue bond. Any other questions on that? And that's really all I had from a financial statement perspective. If there are any other questions on the financial statements or the other audit results document that you have in front of you, you know, now would be a great time to bring that up.
How does this report relate to like the community block grant funds that we received almost $1 million for the street project that we just did this, well, a year ago, and that would be a part of this audit. How does that reflect on the numbers? Because we pursued a $1.1 million project and we got $980-some thousand from the federal government to support that. So does that warp the equation here or the chart or?
Well, most of those costs would be capital related. So like when we're looking at like how much the percentage of your debt compared to your non-capital expenses, it shouldn't be factoring in there. How it does factor in is, obviously you have some grant revenue and some project costs, and I think those are in your capital projects fund in 24. And then also what that does is when you get above a certain threshold of spending, it triggers a grant compliance audit, which we've done for the last couple of years now. So I think that just went out in final, just last week, so.
So essentially it's kind of a wash
Yeah.
when you're receiving those federal.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is that you're gonna fund your projects with some revenue source, and in this case, we didn't have to issue debt for it, so you got a revenue, so it's kind of an in and an out.
Okay.
Other questions?
For the newer members, utility debt is the city's debt. In other words, any revenues or any debt that utility occurs, the treatment plant, $13 million debt, that's city is ultimately responsible for that debt, and it goes against their debt limit.
For the utilities? Yeah, I mean, the revenue debt is really kind of like, are they generating enough revenue through the rates to be able to repay the debt? So that is another kind of.
We received clean water fund money, and that had to be assured before we received those
Sure.
elements of finance
Yep.
as well.
Exactly, yep.
So there's so many pieces of the pie here. And I was remiss to introduce the new alderperson. We have a new alderperson in every ward this time around.
Oh, nice.
So half the council has been replaced. This is Bob Chapman. He represents the first ward with Dick Evans. Troy Justman, who's representing the second ward with Jane Foodie. And we got Doug Lee, who represents the third ward along with Jim Runge.
All right. Well,
So you had a few familiar faces.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's good to meet you, and it's a pleasure to work with the city. We've been working with the city for a long time, and we really appreciate it. And this nice, small town, and just kind of predictable at least. And it's a really great job for us. We appreciate it.
Other questions for Amanda?
Yeah, when you get on the bigger one here, the reporting and insights, some of the you get into the controls and the financial statement process and over the billing and stuff, and make recommendations to obviously improve our auditing and keep everything above board. Aren't these some of the ones same we had last year, if I remember correctly, reading that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of them kind of repeat from year to year. Some of them are more about ideally all of, there's the segregation of duties, requirements. And so those are going to show up just because of the level of staffing that you have here. I mean, that's really typical for our smaller communities. There might be a handful of them that kind of come across every once in a while, certain projects have a retainage and they don't always get recorded every year. So there's some things that we do some maintenance in the general ledger for during the audit time. But it's kind of a year-end thing only, and so it's not one of those things that, the city comes across, the staff comes across every day, so yeah.
Just wondered.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to take a look at those, and if there's anything that is hey, this is a good idea, this is something that we can address with the staffing that we have, I think that's, important to do. anything else?
Anything else for Amanda? Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. Have a good night.
Any other communications? Kaylee, you have anything from the workshop?
Megan and I are going to be attending a elections conference in Rothschild on the 30th and the 1st. That's about it.
City did receive a thank you from the Sharp family. Thank you for the flowers sent to Rachel Sharp's memorial service. Rachel had many fond memories of working for the city. Would have been pleased to be remembered, the Sharp family. Rachel passed this last month, and she was our utility collection clerk as well as a deputy clerk for the city for many, many years. Did you take her job, Jim?
There was somebody in between me.
Okay, all right. Right. Okay, moving on. Approve payments of bills. Checks for $549,468.63. Electronic transfers of $205,137.64. Is there a motion to approve the payment of bills?
So moved.
Motion by Runge. Second by Chapman. Any further discussion on those? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Runge,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Foodie,
Aye.
Justman,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Payment of bills have been approved. Reports of officials. Mayor, Resolution 34, 2025, approved mayoral appointments. Whereas the mayor has diligently searched for individuals willing to give of themselves by serving on the Utility Commission and the CDA Committee. And whereas the mayor wishes to make the following appointment, Utility Commissioner Robert Offeld, his term will serve until October of 2028. Stan Smith on the CDA, his term will go from September to 2029. Now therefore be it resolved that Common Council City of Juneau accepts the aforementioned recommendation passed by the Common Council of the City of Juneau this 9th day of September 2025. Is there a motion to that effect? Motion by Chapman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lee. Any further discussion? Both Robert and Stan are re-ups. Robert's been on for quite a while. Stan, the CDA is not real active, but I think he's been there for at least 2 terms as well. So both contribute something. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Chapman,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Foodie,
Aye.
Justman,
Aye.
Runge.
Aye.
Resolution 34, 2025 is passed. Clerk Treasurer, anything else to report, Keely?
Nope.
Written reports, any questions on the building permit report, the police department report, Juneau Fire and EMS reports? None. Reports of committees, commissions, and boards. Jim, do you have a report for the library director tonight? Or did
No.
she plain forget about it?
And frankly, forgot about it. She is usually, I was expecting to see her here.
On your last meeting, you didn't have a quorum, so.
Okay, Plan Commission. Troy, you got a report for us?
Yes, I do. So our main discussion that night was, we received the plan for the Whiskers new parking lot. It's gonna be 90 stalls. With the amount of parking that they have now behind their buildings, and then with the All-Tech building, right around 1 stall per employee. So it should be good as long as there's no they don't expand, and then, well, that's something we'll deal with when that comes up. Then, property maintenance, there was a discussion of the 119 North Main Street asking about a possible raise order. I believe that Rob had said something that there was already a building permit issued to that, and wasn't sure if something happened, they might apply for it again. So we didn't really take any action on that. And then the house on North Main Street that was damaged by the fire, that's set to be demoed by Town and Country. And that was it for our meeting.
So with the new parking lot, there's no need for employees to park on the street anymore. I heard that it maybe wasn't big enough, that maybe people are parking in the street, or?
Well, the requirement, if all the spaces, it goes by square footage for the requirement of parking spaces, not by the number of employees. But so much of their building is warehouse, so that reduces the number of the required parking spaces for their operation. So I guess with the 90 they'd be adding, they're talking 230 parking spaces, which adequately covers each shift. Unless you have the
So it's
expansive
not really
growth.
necessary to have them park on the street anymore?
Well, I
Or
would
does it
think
still
wouldn't
happen?
be, but,
I
I think part of
know.
it is their smoking policy. People are in the street to smoke during their breaks and before work and after work, so because of that, I'm not sure what they're gonna do for the parking lot across the street.
It's our understanding they're gonna allow smoking there,
Okay, well then that should clear.
shift everybody off the street.
That there should be no more on-street parking?
Right. This parking lot only, their other parking lots are still non-smoking, so I'm
Why
hoping.
wasn't really asking about smoking or not smoking? I don't know how that relates to parking.
The reason they're
Because they don't
parking
allow
on the street is because they can smoke on the
it.
street.
Yes, they can sit in their cars and smoke on the street.
Oh, I was wondering, why are we talking about smoking?
Yeah.
I should have clarified that.
That's okay.
Tony mentioned the Alltech building. Where are they building this parking lot? In between those two buildings or across the street?
Across the street.
Across the street.
Across the street.
Oh, okay.
That's her tentative plan. That's always subject to change by the officials in Michigan, so.
Yep.
But, yeah, they could have probably solved most of their problems if they would have just loosened up and allowed them to smoke in the parking lot, which they always did. So once they prohibited that, that's how the parking got pushed out onto the street.
And they sit out there with their car doors open and you're trying to come through there and you meet a car and you gotta stop and wait. It's kind of a pain.
So it's not, not that there's not adequate parking, it's because they wanna sit in their car and smoke,
Yeah.
okay?
Well, right
During the
at
day,
moment,
there
there isn't adequate parking. The new parking lot would provide that. And if they allow smoking in there, that should clear the street of
Okay.
vehicles.
The majority of their workforce works in the buildings off of Fairfield versus the ones on Western. Western, you can go by there anytime and park anywhere you want,
Yep.
you know, so, but it's such a long walk from that side of the building to the other side of the building where they work. And of course, if you're a smoker, you don't have much time in that 15-minute break to get from A to B to get to your habit, I guess, is what it boils down to. So pretty much takes care of that. I think we beat it to death with the Whisker staff and whatever to make sure what they were doing was gonna work. They did close on the lot today. So I guess that's all behind us right now. And they plan on starting to construct this parking lot in early November. So hopefully by the time the snow plowing starts, we'll have them off the street, so. Any other questions on plan commission? Seeing none, move on to finance. Richard.
Finance, we had a joint public safety and finance meeting. Fire Chief Weiss was there to present a change order for further repairs on ladder truck 2371. And that included a pump overhaul and installation of a roto ray warning light. It's a light that goes in the grill of the fire truck So it increases the visibility for people outside, people to get out of the way. And the joint committee approved the change order. And then we moved on to the finance portion of the meeting, and the personnel committee had passed and forwarded a 3% wage increase for city staff in 2026. We discussed that, and the finance committee approved the 3% increase. The personnel committee also passed and forwarded the tentative agreement between the city of Juneau and the Juneau Police Association regarding wages for 2026. When the original contract was negotiated in 2023, the third year wages were left undecided at that time because we didn't know how the economy was gonna go, and we decided to have the third year negotiated. It turned out this year, so the finance committee reviewed the agreement and approved it. Then we talked about the resurfacing of the tennis courts, came in well under budget, and the recreation committee would like to use the savings for a concession stand at the Wild Goose Park. We didn't take any action on this. I guess we'd like to see more cost details from the rec committee. Megan went over the department budget proposals for next year, and we'll talk more about that at next month's meeting. Megan also shared the current state of the ARPA funds that have to be spent by the end of this year. And that was our meeting, and I believe I have some resolutions. So resolution 35-2025, approved 2026 wage increase. Whereas the finance committee has reviewed a request for a 3% wage increase for 2026 for city employees. And whereas the finance committee recommends approving the 3% wage increase for city employees effective starting the period to be paid on January 9th, 2026, which is the first pay period of 2026. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Juneau accepts the aforementioned recommendation passed by the Common Council of the City of Juneau this 9th day of September 2025. I would move for passage of resolution 35-2025.
I'll second. Motion by Evan, second by Rumby. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to make everyone aware before they vote. Maybe you have this information, maybe you do not. But I just want to let you know what the utility raises were. Electric superintendent got 8.24. He has 2 apprentices, and one apprentice is at 9.26% increase. Another one is at 13.01. The utility accountant is 10.76. The utility billing clerk did not receive a raise. The wastewater treatment plant superintendent got 8.4. And there are 3 operators. One received 10.48, another one received 13.18, and another one received 4.68. I know the public sector was also brought up for what raises they get, and I have contacted some, and some some private sectors, some receive up to 6 to 8%. I mean, but I don't like to compare to private. I know some people bring that up all the time, but I just wanted everyone to be aware before you're voting tonight that these are utility raises, and I guess I'd like to see that these wage increases be higher.
Richard, you want to touch upon, it wasn't a cost of living raise for the utility, it was a comparison?
Yeah, those raises for the utility were driven by market. That's how the utility commission decided to handle raises this year. They didn't talk about cost of living at all. They paid what the market is calling for. I believe they actually used 2024 market prices.
Yeah, they did. They were a year behind when they,
Yeah,
So that doesn't put them up to the top of the pack.
no. I guess that's all I can say about what the utility commission did there.
And I'm just asking for a little equity, even with that being said. I just think there should be a little bit more equity between what the city gets and what the utility gets, because in my experience of the past 30 years, it does nothing but draws lines in the sand and does nothing to promote any teamwork between the utility and the city. And that's all I'm gonna say, and I mean,
Further
the numbers are
discussion?
the numbers.
Motion and second, roll call vote, please.
Evans,
Aye.
Runge,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Foodie,
Name.
Justman,
Aye.
Lee.
aye.
Resolution 35, 2025 is passed.
Okay, resolution 36 2025. Approve additional funding for fire truck number 2371 from Seagrave Fire Apparatus LLC. Whereas the Public Safety and Finance Committee have reviewed a change order received from Seagrave Fire Apparatus LLC for additional damages noted after inspection for the pump and to replace the warning lights on fire truck number 2371. And whereas the Public Safety and Finance Committee recommend approving change order number 2 in the amount of $15,679.63 to proceed with repairing the additional items as seen in Exhibit A. And whereas the Finance Committee recommends using the 2024 debt proceeds to cover the additional costs not to exceed $15,679.63. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Juneau accepts the aforementioned recommendation passed by the Common Council of the City of Juneau this 9th day of September 2025. I would move for passage of Resolution 36-2025.
Motion by Evans, is there a
Second.
second? Second by Foodie, further discussion? This is the refurbishment of a 20-year-old fire truck. 23-year-old fire truck. I think it was a 2024. 2001 truck, I think it was. But anyway, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. We're forced to rehab this truck to be able to keep it in service. They did a initial estimate, which supposedly covered all the issues and whatever, but as the truck was delivered to their service center, they continually find additional things that need attention. So these are unique repair facilities. You can't just go down the street and find another one. Probably 2 or 3 of them throughout the entire state of Wisconsin. So we're kind of stuck. We're kind of at the mercy of their wishes when they let us know about something that needs to be repaired. We're hoping to leave this truck in with this rehab of this truck, it should be good for another 20 years because the City of Juneau does not wear out fire trucks by any means. They just get to the point where they can no longer be on the road. But with this complete rehab, it allows us to run it for another 20 years. So hopefully that's true. And again, our back is kind of against the wall. This came up and it's another piece of the puzzle on top of a big pie right now. So like I said, a new truck of this caliber is pushing almost $2 million. So we certainly can't afford to go out and do that. We've got to keep what we got and keep it in running condition so our firefighters can be safe using it. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Evans,
Aye.
Foodie,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Justman,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Runge.
Aye.
Resolution 36, 2025 is passed.
Okay, resolution 37-2025, approve police union contract negotiations regarding Article 18, Section 1, wages. Whereas the Public Safety and Personnel Committees have reviewed negotiations regarding the police union contract for 2026. And whereas the Public Safety and Personnel Committees have agreed to revisions to the police union contract regarding one specific item, Article 18, Section 1, wages, as shown in Exhibit A. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Juneau accepts the aforementioned recommendation passed by the Common Council of the City of Juneau this 9th day of September 2025. I move for passage of Resolution 37-2025.
I'll second it.
Motion by Evans, second by Chapman. Any further discussion? I want to touch upon had a couple private sessions with their negotiator, their union negotiator, Richard.
Yeah, we had 2 sessions with them. They were coming in asking for 9 to 10% raises for their folks, and they wanted a percentage raise plus a step-up wage raise, and we didn't want to do the step-up wage part of it, so we came back at them with a percentage, and they came back at us, and we met somewhere in the middle, and this is what we have. You can see it on Appendix A.
Yeah, the market raise that they wanted in 3 positions were substantial with,
Very much so. They were comparing to newly negotiated contracts for other communities, particularly Princeton.
Princeton was their boilerplate one that they're.
And so next year, the new contract will come up for negotiation. So that's something that we'll have to look forward to.
It's so hard to compare. Princeton was a comparable size to Juneau, but we don't know how active in Green Lake County the county is with policing the village of Princeton or the town of Princeton or city of Princeton, whatever it is. So it's so hard to compare. We get a lot of assistance being in the same community as the home base for Dodge County Police Department. You know, whenever we're short, they're right there. We never really have a problem. That might be different in Green Lake where they gotta go 30 miles or something when they do have a call. So it's hard to, but like Richard said, they just recently negotiated that. So that's brandy new. So they want to force that down every other community's throat as a boilerplate that everybody else should follow. But it's getting tougher and tougher to maintain your own police department in small communities because the cost of the salaries of these officers. We did the best we could negotiating. Dick and I were happy with how it panned out. One thing about it, they do have a realistic negotiator for their small union that they have. He's easy to talk to and doesn't hold a grudge or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we did the best we could. That was the long and short of it. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Evans,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Foodie. Aye. Justman,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Rungy.
Aye.
Resolution 37, 2025 is passed. Moving on, personnel, Richard.
Personnel, I talked about most of our personnel stuff in the finance. Our personnel committee approved the 3% city staff increase and forwarded to finance. We had a closed session about the police contract. We came out of closed session and accepted the agreement and forwarded to finance. And one other thing we did, we discussed the utility stage staff wage increases for 2026 that were approved by the utility commission. We just had a discussion about it. That was it for our personnel meeting.
Any questions? Moving on.
I'm sorry. We briefly talked about ARPA funds, and I guess I just want to discuss it some more because it's very important that these funds get spent before the end of the year. And we are at approximately $80,000 that's left in ARPA funds, and $50,000 I think was the Vibrant Spaces grant, correct?
Yeah.
So that's 130,000 together. I'm just wondering, I know you were gonna follow up with Jason to find out, because it's just urgent to get some of these projects done.
There's no issue with spending that vibrant space money totally on the Gathering Plaza, and they're already looking to expedite the balance. There'll be a recommendation coming for
Thank you for
approval.
coming.
Thank you, Todd. Approval for this committee to approve any other ones. I think we pretty much got things narrowed down, right, Dick, as far as what you're looking to do? Utilities putting together for proposal for additional street lighting. And any excess can go towards the general street project if there is funding. So it'll be expedited by the end of the year. That shouldn't be a problem at all. And the retainage that for the warranty on the colored cement, that shouldn't be an issue either. You can actually bump that up to 5% of the project there. So retainage for removing that concrete and replacing it, even if somebody other than Rennoc has to do it, I suppose.
Does that have to be done before the end of the year?
No.
Okay.
We'll just pay the
Just
bill,
get
we'll just
this
pay the
amount.
bill for it, and yeah, that's what Jane's concerned about, is that we don't lose any of our ARPA dollars, but we can use the ARPA dollars, the remaining dollars for the total street project as well. They're intended for these upgrades, but you know,
So one of the things we have to get going is the streetlights. I see
If
the
that's what we're
streetlights
gonna
are on, I thought we were.
that's gotta be decided yet.
So you have to wait for the next utility, is that,
Well, until next finance meeting, until you get a firm number on those.
okay, so streetlights was one item
Yep.
for spending the funds. What were the other items?
Planters,
Yeah, I think they've already been purchased.
Megan ordered planters
Yes.
yesterday.
so we'll have a more concrete dollar amount by the time it goes all.
Okay, what invoices are we waiting for yet? Are there any outstanding invoices?
I've got a small one, that's about all, nothing that's gonna be major.
You've been working on it?
No, that's about
I
it.
just don't wanna see it lost, I know.
No,
you tell me
the
you
dollars
won't.
aren't gonna, believe me, Jane, the dollars will be spent. There will be no issue there.
But
We're
the
just-
work has to be done before we can spend the dollars, and I'm just afraid of the time frame.
What work are you referring to?
What, streetlights, if it,
Oh, that way, yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna go with that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's something, I think, you know, especially the way things are, I don't know if you can just have streetlights delivered tomorrow morning.
No,
and
you can't.
Installed next week,
No, you can't. But
I just,
Nick's been directed to get some numbers together. He was having a little bit of problem with his pricing program down there. They apparently changed some things with the program they use for pricing and stuff like that. So, but he's aware of it, what have you. But this ultimately will run across this table. It's just not gonna be finance that's gonna decide, so.
okay,
I think the majority of us are in agreement, but you know, the ones that are outside the committee deserve to be able to voice their opinion on those ARPA monies too. So.
no, I just wanna make sure that, you know, we can pay bills in a day, but the work has to be done before we can pay the
Yep.
bills, and what besides streetlights, the planters, I know you just said that it will be spent appropriately, is it, planters aren't gonna take up the
I
balance,
thought they were around
streetlights aren't gonna take up the balance, but
I thought they were about $5,000
the streetlights?
for the planters.
Oh, okay,
And I think the latest thing that I got from Megan says that there's some money needed to pay for the plaza lights. There's no plaza lights going
that's
there.
separate from streetlights.
That's separate from
Okay.
Yeah,
streetlights.
there's two of them up there.
There, she has some unpaid Kaplan and Keenest invoices. She doesn't really know how much that's for, and there's some MSA invoices, and then Wagner Electric.
And that CBRF money that we got, or the grant, no,
Oh,
for the,
another one.
that is closed, or that's satisfied now with the final blacktopping. So it'll just be a matter of cutting checks for that. So I don't think there's really any work besides what we'll be doing internally here in the city. You know, I think our
The
contract.
street for Old Street is done, except for painting it, right?
Yep, and they've already done the crosswalks down by the post
Yeah, I
office.
seen that they started on that.
Finished blacktop is up to Fair Street, so the remaining blacktop doesn't get done until next year, the
But that's
last
not
one
part of
hundred
the
block.
project.
No, that's not part of the block grant
It's
monies.
just up Oak Street.
What do
And
you plan-
Miller Street also is gotta be done next year as well.
What are you guys planning for the planters?
What's that?
What are you planning to put in the planters?
We're not gonna worry about that. I don't know.
Well, she had told me too that you need special dirt for these planters.
We should get that ordered too.
Yes.
I would say order with everything you need to, because I wanna make sure it's done.
It will be.
So is there anything else though, because you think between Copeland, Keenest, the streetlights, and those three things mainly, that'll take care of the balance?
Yep.
Okay, I just hope everything falls in line and gives enough time to file the paper.
And like I said, the balance can be paid towards the road project if there's money
right.
left.
Just the old street.
But we wanted to use these ARPA funds for the upgrades, focusing on the upgrades, and the balance can be used for that, so.
Okay.
Any other question? Good question. Seeing none? Moving on, public safety.
Well, public safety was covered in our joint meeting, so
Moving
they
on,
handled that well.
public works, James, you didn't have a meeting.
Public Works was canceled. We got probably gonna have a pretty decently sized agenda at for our September meeting, so.
We did have, street department is out, as said, lining the streets that are now have been blacktop. Western Avenue, East Oak Grove Street from Quick Trip all the way out to city limits is now complete. Like I said, the boys were on there and lining the crosswalks yesterday and today, I think they were out there. And then, Oak Street from Fair Street down to Depot, those two blocks, which are under the grant program funding, which had to be done at the end of this year. I don't think there's anything left there. Curb gutter replacements all been done, blacktop's been finished, and awaiting the final coat for the last 100 block, but that doesn't have any deadlines to do that, as well as Miller Street. You know, we had a lot of costs on Miller Street to dig out the old crud, and get a decent base there for blacktopping, and they did ramp the openings into the parking lot for the county employees that were worried that they were hurting their tires bumping up that 2 inches over the gutter into the parking lot.
Slow down.
We were having a hard time walking up them too, weren't we?
Yeah, that too.
Different bits.
Other than that, moving on then to cable TV, James.
Cable TV did not meet, but I think we had some questions from the last meeting that you had for me maybe. I just wanna say that we do have 2 cameras going tonight. The long one is a live feed to the YouTube channel, hopefully to replace the other camera. And then what our hope is to use the live camera, once it downloads and everything, it should be an easy link to our website.
Any questions for James?
So it's gonna do a live feed and also you'd be able to look at it later.
Which you can now already, because he puts those out on
From the other
YouTube.
camera, right?
But this, I know the first time we didn't have the sound right, you couldn't hear anything, but he tweaked that out, and he also took care of getting the utility ones recorded and that they're live on YouTube. And it should be an easy link from now on to the website instead of having the public access channel.
So there's gonna be a link on the
That's my
City
goal.
of Juneau website?
Yes, where you see the agendas and minutes, there'll be another one for video, hopefully. That's my hope anyways. That's the end
Sounds
goal.
good.
CDA, we received the check from the business partners of Whisker for those lots today, so that's officially sold, so that monies will go into the CDA account for the purchase of that land. We didn't have a meeting, I'll just give you a report on that. Recreation Committee, Jane?
Recreation Committee met and we talked about, the soccer subcommittee was there and we had arranged the soccer field one way. I don't know a whole lot about soccer, I'll be honest about it, but Kevin Klieger and Paul Shanks came and told us why the way it used to be was the best way. And we talked more about where the concession stand / storage building would be. And Hunter is doing an amazing number of programs. He has an adult soccer, T-ball. They have concluded flag football. We haven't heard punt, pass, and kick for a long time. He's bringing that back.
Nice.
Yeah, Rage Soccer is doing amazing. And we haven't had youth basketball either for a long time. Youth basketball is back. And like Dick referred to as the tennis courts and basketball courts were resurfaced. It saved money while Farner was in Juneau. And that is my meeting.
Questions for Jane? Moving on, utility, Doug?
We had actually 2 meetings last month. We had one on August 20th. We were interviewing engineering firms for an upcoming project, the disinfection project. Allied Technologies, Donahue Engineering, and MSA were all there to give us their spiel on why they're the best firm we should hire. Decision was not made on that night on who to hire. That was on the 20th, and then we had another meeting on September 2nd, which was last week. Went over the basics, consumption losses, utility account report, electrical superintendent had to report ATC completion deadline by the end of September, depending on Charter and AT&T getting done with their stuff. 2 streetlights were temporarily moved on East Grove and put back up. Had to replace concrete footings. The shoebox style fixtures have been replaced with LEDs. And he will be preparing budget numbers for next month's meeting. Wastewater superintendent had a review. That was more to do with the engineering firms again, for the WWTP disinfection project. I believe he's gonna process of getting numbers from 2 of the firms. There was some valves that needed to get rebuilt and they can't be replaced because they're too old, but they can't be rebuilt because they're too old, but they will be replaced and paid for by the DNR replacement fund. So that's good news. The WWT project is complete, except for some cleaning and labeling, but basically the job is done for the new wastewater treatment plant. And there's Sentinel Foods is having problems with the flow meter. They're saying their meters are reading different than us, so that is being investigated. Nails Farms is looking to tile one of their fields, which will help us with Wild Goose Park and the water flow problem. I'm not quite sure how all that works, but if it's a benefit that we have less water in our parks, do they have to get a permit to do that or not because it's agricultural or?
That's all kind of handled through the county.
Okay.
When they do tiling project.
And then we had a closed session. The closed session was wasn't for a lot, there was some wording that wasn't quite exactly right. And the closed session was for wording on the apprentice wage package. And the way it worked out, the apprentice gets paid off of the 100% of the journey wages. And the apprentice gets paid like is it 80%, 90%, whatever.
In tiers.
Yeah, in tiers. The pay period raise, it will be the first pay period of the year instead of the first of the year. And that was about it.
Any questions for Doug? None? Any old business?
I just wanted to ask, up on North Main Street, next to 491 North Main Street, there's a house that was completely demolished. Do you know if there's plans to rebuild there or what the plans are?
Rumor has it, yeah, but I haven't really checked with Rob to see if they pulled the permit. They removed the complete basement. I don't know what the theory on that was, unless they just wanted to get back to proper setback. That the house that went down in a time of disaster, according to our ordinances, it could be rebuilt on the footprint. but it was too close to the street, so I don't know if that was the theory of pushing it back, but added a lot of expense, they tore out the whole foundation, so I don't know. But rumor has it, they were rebuilding it, but I don't take that for gospel.
I was just curious.
Any other questions? Any new business?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. One, we have that burnt down house that's been torn down on Fairfield. And there was an obvious safety hazard there that has to be taken care of. And that we have an open basement, we have a plastic fence that the city's put around it, which the homeowner lives behind there, knocks down constantly. I know I've picked it up on my own a couple times. The hole needs to be filled in, period. It is a safety hazard to children or any of the other things. There's standing water in it, so there's a health hazard and a hazard to any, possibly young children that would get around there. And it's being used by the people, the neighbors, as a parking lot. And, but more importantly, that's trespassing and all the other stuff with that hole needs to be filled in, period. There's a liability, I don't know if there's gonna be a liability to us as a city, but if we have a known hazard and we don't do anything with it, somebody's gonna come after us eventually too. And, we have dirt that we could fill it in with if we had to. And I think we're gonna have to either get our city attorney on it and somebody else and figure out what we gotta do, because you can't have a hole sit in the middle of it that's, full of water. If any smaller child falls in there, they're gonna die and drown. That's a 10-foot drop. And there's garbage in there, and that's, you have whatever you got growing in there. There's stuff growing in there that gosh only knows what it is. And that's something that really has to be taken care of, and soon. And I don't know what our options are, but
Who owns the property?
some lady does. The one property, I'm not sure about, there's a question of if these people have even been contacted, because we had to have the raise order done to get the place tore down.
I can tell you what I know about it, Jim. The north half, that was a 0 lot line duplex, so there's
Right.
2 owners involved. The north half is already delinquent in taxes and would be county owned. And from what my understanding is, this year, the south half will be 3 years in the rears of the taxes as well. Kaylee, do you know anything?
I think the county's taking the one half this year.
Yep,
They don't own anything yet.
okay.
So
Alright.
they'll be taking the north half this year and then the other half next year, I believe.
Right, the city did raise the property, the dwelling above the basement because of the time length that it went with nothing being
Yeah.
done. So we did
Well, yeah.
execute that in a timely well, not a really timely fashion, but that's really, other than putting the orange fence around it, that's the end of the city's responsibility. It's still owned by somebody, it's still owned by 2 property owners, and eventually will be owned by the county because of failure to pay taxes. So hopefully that'll be cleaned up. So, yeah, that's the best I can tell you on that, Jim. Hopefully come this fall or into the first year when the deadline passes for paying taxes, it'll be completely owned by the county. And hopefully they'll take action on it.
So if something happens to somebody, we just say, well, that's kind of too bad because you have to sue this lady who has no money. Somewhere along the line, cities have an obligation to make sure that, items are safe. Otherwise, why have building codes? Why have all the rest of it?
I agree with you there.
And I think we have to have direct our city attorney to figure out how we get it and fill in that hole.
I don't know if that's our responsibility or not. I guess we get.
Responsibility, but there's
I
a
guess-
moral
I
responsibility
guess we
too.
I guess we can get opinion, yeah.
Yeah, there's, I'm sure there's somewhere in the laws that we can do something, we can fill that damn thing in. Or we have to build a better fence around it.
I agree
Cause
with that.
that fence, I mean, a bird knocks it over.
But you bring a good point up, the neighbors should not be using it as a
Right, and
dumping
that's-
ground.
And that's something that should also be referred to the police department.
Yep.
Well, you're
And they are
and the
aware.
building inspector.
Even if the fence gets